Hi dear children, how are you? Hope all of you are fine. Today I will teach you a lesson, The Invention of Vita-Wonk. It's written by Roald Dahl. It's an extract taken from his book Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. The main characters of this story is Willy Wonka and Charlie. Children, may I ask you some questions? Who are the oldest people you know? What are the oldest things you have in your house, in your city, town or village? How old are they? Have you ever wished that you were older? I don't think so. Have you wished that you could grow up in a hurry? Anyway, let's read the chapter, The Invention of Vita-Wonk. Mr. Willy Wonka begins by inventing Wonka White, which makes people younger. But Wonka White is too strong, so some people disappear because their age becomes minus. One person actually becomes minus 87, which means he has got to wait 87 years before he can come back. Mr. Willy Wonka must invent a new thing. Here, in this chapter, we can understand that Mr. Willy Wonka was a scientist. He invented a medicine which made people younger. It was a tonic named Wonka White, but it was such a powerful medicine that many people disappeared after their age went in minus. One person even became minus 87. The poor fellow had to wait 87 years to come back. Children, do you think can anyone's age be a minus number? No, it cannot be. Here minus 87 means that the person will have to wait for 87 years to take birth. Let's continue. Mr. Wonka said, "So, once again I rolled up my sleeves and set to work. Once again I squeezed my brain, searching for the new recipe. I had to create age to make people old, older, oldest, ha!" I cried, for now the ideas were beginning to come. What is the oldest living thing in the world? What lives longer than anyone else? A tree, Charlie said. Here Willy Wonka decided to invent a new thing to undo the harm. He had to make people old. He wanted to know what the oldest thing in the world was or what lived longer than anyone else. He asked a question to his assistant Charlie. Charlie named Tree. What was his question? What was the oldest thing in the world? What lived longer than anyone else? The answer was Tree. Charlie said the answer. Okay, see the next paragraphs. Right, you are Charlie, but what kind of a tree? Not the Douglas fir, not the oak, not the cedar. No, my boy. It's a tree called the bristlecone pine that grows up on the slopes of Wheeler Peak in Nevada, USA. You can find bristlecone pines on Wheeler Peak today that are over 4,000 years old. This is fact, Charlie. Ask any dendrochronologist you like and look that word up in the dictionary when you get home, will you please? So that started me off. I jumped into the great glass elevator and rushed all over the world collecting special items from the oldest living things. Here, when he asked the question what was the oldest living thing in the world, Charlie answered tree. But questions emerged which tree. It was certainly not the fir, oak or cedar. It was a tree called bristlecone pine that grew in Nevada, USA. Such trees were 4,000 years old. We can find this upon the slopes of Wheeler Peak in Nevada. Wonka got into his great glass elevator and rushed all over the world. He also collected many different items from the oldest living things. See the items. A pint of sap from a 4,000-year-old bristlecone pine, the toenail clippings from a 168-year-old Russian farmer called Petrovich Grigorovich, an egg laid by a 200-year-old tortoise belonging to the king of Tonga, the tail of a 51-year-old horse in Arabia, the whiskers of a 36-year-old cat called Crumpets, an old flea which had lived on crumpets for 36 years, the tale of a 207-year-old giant rat from Tibet, the black teeth of a 97-year-old grimalkin living in a cave on Mount Popocatépetl, the knuckle bones of a 700-year-old cattle from Peru. Here, Wonka collected many different items from the oldest living things. He took a pint of sap from the bristlecone pine, the toenail clippings from a 168-year-old Russian farmer, an egg laid by a 200-year-old tortoise, the tail of a 51-year-old horse in Arabia, the whiskers of a 36-year-old cat, an old flea which had lived on crumpets for 36 years, the tail of 207-year-old giant rat from Tibet, the black teeth of a 97-year-old grimalkin living in a cave on Mount Popocatépetl, the knuckle bones of a 700-year-old cattle from Peru, and so on. Let's now move on to the next paragraph. All over the world, Charlie, Mr. Wonka went on. I tracked down very old and ancient animals and took an important little bit of something from each one of them. A hair or an eyebrow, or sometimes it was no more than an ounce or two of the jam scraped from between its toes while it was sleeping. I tracked down the whistle pig, the bobolink, the scrock, the polyfrog, the giant curlicue, the stinging slug, and the venomous squircle, who can spit poison right into your eye from 50 yards away. But there is no time to tell you about them all now, Charlie. Let me just say quickly that in the end, after lots of boiling and bubbling and mixing and testing in my inventing room, I produced one tiny cupful of oily black liquid and gave 4 drops of it to a brave 20-year-old Oompa Loompa volunteer to see what happened. What did happen? Charlie asked. It was fantastic, cried Mr. Wonka. The moment he swallowed it, he began wrinkling and shriveling up all over, and his hair started dropping off, and his teeth started falling out, and before I knew it, he had suddenly become an old fellow of 75. And thus, my dear Charlie, was Vita-Wonk invented. See, my dear children, Mr. Wonka tracked down very old animals like the whistle pig, the bobolink, the scrock, the polyfrog, the giant curlicue, the stinging slug, and the venomous squircle. You know, the venomous squircle can spit poison right into your eye from 50 yards away. And he took a bit of something from each one of them. In the end, he boiled and tasted the product in his inventing room. He prepared a black liquid by boiling and mixing of different parts of different living things. He gave 4 drops of that black liquid to a 20-year-old man, Oompa Loompa, to see what happened. What was the result? Charlie asked. Mr. Wonka said that the effect of the medicine was swift and fantastic. The moment that young man gulped down those drops, he began growing old and wrinkled. His hair dropped off and his teeth also started falling out. In an instant, the 20-year-old boy became an old man of 75. In this way, Vita-Wonk was invented. You know, the name of the invention was Vita-Wonk. Finally, the scientist got success in his new invention of Vita-Wonk.